Hello everyone, this is Reema L Kotian, Assistant Professor of English in Government First Grade College Harapanahalli that is affiliated to Davangere University. Today I'm going to deal with the analysis of W.B. Yeats' The Second Coming, which is a part of the syllabus prescribed in optional English by Davangere University for the 6th MBA students. Now, before going on to an analysis of the poem, it is important to know a few important points about the author, William Butler Yeats. William Butler Yeats was born on 13 June 1865 and passed away on 28 January 1939. He was an Irish poet and one of the foremost figures of 20th century literature. A pillar of the Irish literary establishment, he was one of the founders of the Abbey Theatre. During his later years, he served 2 terms as a senator of the Irish Free State. Though he had several transcendental views or ideologies in his youth, from 1900 onwards, he wrote more physical and realistic poetry. And one of the high points of his career was that he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1923. Now, moving on to the context of the poem. The poem, The Second Coming, was written by W.B. Yeats after the end of the World War I in 1919, and it largely reflects the then prevalent mood of disenchantment and alienation that was seen in society due to the after effects of the First World War. Now, the term Second Coming was taken by W.B. Yeats after the Christian biblical prophecy of the second coming of Jesus Christ, where Jesus Christ was believed to come to reign on earth after the end of days. However, W.B. Yeats' poem takes the term Second Coming and describes an apocalypse led not by Jesus Christ but by a fearful beast who would come and alter the world on a very, very fundamental basis. This poem more or less suggests that modernity represents chaos, as is clearly evident by World War I, and a collapse of civilization rather than its apex. Now, before moving on to analysis of the poem, I think it's important to once read the poem as a whole, and that is what I'm going to do. So please try and follow the poem once, and then we will go on to a line-by-line analysis of it. The Second Coming by W.B. Yeats. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in the sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again. But now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come around at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. Now moving on to a line-by-line analysis of the poem. Let's consider the first 3 lines. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer, things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Now, the very first line uses the word gyre. Gyre is nothing but a spiral or a vortex consisting of interlocked circles. Now, this was a symbol that Yeats was perpetually fascinated by. He believed that the universe comprised of interlocked circles, each of which represented individual existence, and all of which coalesce together to form the whole of existence. And he believes, by using this very first line, turning and turning in the widening gyre, he believes that the world, the society at large, the humanity is churning and churning. And out of this churning, out of this present turmoil and haze, where people cannot see anything clearly, a new order and a new society is going to be churned out. Now let us look at the second line. From a very, very large and indistinct, gigantic, unclear beginning, W.B. Yeats suddenly moves to a very, very specific symbol in the second line. The falcon cannot hear the falconer. Here the falcon represents humanity and the falconer represents God. And this line, what W.B. Yeats means by this line is that Humanity on the whole has moved away from God. There is a collapse of ethics and morality and traditional values, as is clearly seen by the bloodshed and the violence that was seen in the World War One. So he says that the world is losing touch with order and morality. Now, this is one way of looking at it. Okay, but the other meaning could also be that the society or the falcon or humanity is breaking free from all its traditional constraints, past constraints and restraints, and is entering into a new world or a new zone where there are endless possibilities and unbounded freedom. However, what Yeats also means to say here would be that when the falcon is moved away from the falconer, the things fall apart, humanity as a whole would collapse, and the center, that is the ethics and the morality which had held us onto a certain path, it cannot hold on anymore. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Now, when the World War One was going on, and post World War One too, what W.B. Yeats says is that collapse and turmoil, dissolution of order, rising violence, bloodshed, destruction, a complete breakdown of innocence and purity was seen to take place in human society. He also observed that the best people, the greatest thinkers, had fallen silent at this point of time and had resigned themselves silently to their fate. Whereas the villains were in power and were screaming loudest about their causes and brainwashing people on a whole. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi. Now we see that here, W.B. Yeats is saying that when he looked at society at large, when he looked at the turmoil and the chaos, he felt sure that some revelation is at hand. Here, W.B. Yeats is referring to the revelations of John, which form a part of the New Testament of the Bible. He says that when this much of chaos and destruction is happening in society, it indicates that there is going to be a second coming as predicted in the Bible. But this second coming is not going to be that of Jesus Christ. It is going to be more like a distorted version of the Christian apocalypse, which indicates that the end of the world is approaching soon. Now, as soon as he talks about or he thinks about the second coming, W.B. Yeats suddenly loses touch or contact with his physical body and he falls into a surreal dreamlike state, okay, which he refers to as Spiritus Mundi. Now, according to W.B. Yeats, Spiritus Mundi is nothing but the world soul or collective consciousness that every person has access to at some corner of their mind. Troubles my sight, somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. Now we see that W.B. Yeats goes into this dreamlike state, and there he sees an image. This spiritus mundi or collective consciousness in his mind is filled with archetypal mythological images. And there he sees a desert. And he sees a terrible beast having the body of a lion and head of a man. And fearful, angry birds flying all around this beast, casting shadows on the desert sand. This image, according to W.B. Yeats, represents the future society. The society that is going to arise out of the churning and the turmoil that happens because of these world wars. The darkness drops again. But now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come around at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. Yeats suddenly comes out of this dream state and back to his physical body. And he realizes that what he has seen is an indication of what is going to happen in the future. He has seen a terrible sight and he cannot forget it. He realizes that the world has been sleeping for over 2000 years and that one cycle has been completed and that now it's the time for the second coming. However, it is not going to be the second coming of Jesus Christ, but rather the coming of the Antichrist, who will mislead people into chaos and destruction. He says that the very indication that he has seen the beast stands as a symbol that something terrible is slowly on its way to be born. Okay, this tide of evil and mystery that is flowing through through the World War One. This is just the precursor or the beginning to something more terrible that will shake the foundation of the world. And that is already approached and is approaching in the form of a modernity where there is a lot of chaos, war, and violence, and a complete loss of ethics and a collapse of the world order. So, W.B. Yeats, basically through this poem, is trying to tell the reader that if humans or if mankind continues on the same path of warfare, then human society does not really have a chance of redemption, and that the destruction is soon to come upon the society, human society as a whole. I hope the analysis that I have tried to do about of the poem has been helpful, and that you will find it satisfactory. Thank you.